There is a kind of power that does not shout, does not threaten, does not tremble at the sound of raised voices. It does not slam doors or clap back with sharp tongues. It simply stands, steady as a mountain, quiet as dawn. And that kind of power unsettles those who live on chaos. Toxic people feed on reaction, on confusion, on your doubt. But when you meet them with calm eyes and an anchored spirit, something shifts. They feel it. The ground beneath their manipulation begins to crack. Tonight, we are not speaking about revenge or loud victories. We are speaking about silent strength, the kind that walks into a room and changes the temperature without saying a word. Because when you master the art of quiet confidence, you do not chase respect, you command it. And those who once tried to control you will begin to fear the very peace they cannot disturb. There is a language more powerful than shouting, more commanding than accusation, and it is the language of calm silence. When someone attempts to provoke you, they are not simply speaking words, they are casting hooks, hoping to catch your anger, your tears, your frustration. They want movement, they want noise, they want proof that they can still reach inside you and rearrange your peace. But when you choose stillness instead, when your face remains composed and your voice does not rise to meet theirs, something remarkable happens. The hook finds no place to land. It falls to the ground, useless. Calm silence is not weakness. It is restraint forged through understanding. It says, I see what you are doing, and I refuse to dance to that rhythm. Toxic people thrive on emotional reactions because reactions give them control. The louder you become, the more they feel powerful. The more you defend yourself, the more they twist your words. But when you pause, when you let their storm rage against a wall of quiet confidence, they are forced to confront their own noise, and many cannot bear the echo of themselves. There is discipline in not responding immediately. It takes strength to breathe through insult, to listen without interrupting, to allow uncomfortable silence to stretch across a room. That silence can feel heavy, but it is heavy with dignity. In that space, you are choosing mastery over impulse. You are choosing clarity over chaos. And that choice unsettles those who are used to controlling the emotional temperature of every encounter. They expect you to flare up. They prepare for battle. Instead, they meet a calm sea that does not rise to their wind. When you refuse to react emotionally, you also protect your own spirit. Anger may feel powerful in the moment, but it drains you. It pulls you into a cycle that was never designed for your growth. Calm silence keeps your energy intact. It allows you to observe rather than absorb. You begin to see patterns clearly, to recognize manipulation without becoming entangled in it. Your silence becomes a shield, not to hide behind, but to stand firmly within. And there is something deeply unsettling about a person who cannot be provoked. It signals maturity. It signals self-control. It signals that your peace is not up for negotiation. Toxic individuals often test boundaries repeatedly, hoping to find a crack. But when they are met again and again with composure, their tactics lose effectiveness. They realize that their usual tools, guilt, blame, exaggeration, have no leverage here. Calm silence also carries an unspoken message. I do not need to prove myself to you. It frees you from the exhausting need to explain, justify, or defend every choice. You begin to understand that not every accusation requires a response, and not every misunderstanding deserves correction. Sometimes the most powerful statement you can make is none at all. In choosing silence, you are not surrendering your voice. You are refining it. You are deciding that your words will be used with intention, not reaction. And in that refinement, you become unshakable. The storm may continue, but it no longer lives inside you. There comes a moment in life when you realize that not every fire requires your water. Some flames are lit not for warmth, not for light, but for spectacle. Drama is an invitation disguised as urgency. It calls your name loudly, insists on your attendance, demands your opinion. But wisdom teaches you that participation is a choice. And when you choose peace over participation, you step into a power that few understand, but many feel. Emotional detachment is not coldness, it is clarity. It is the decision to observe without absorbing, to witness without wearing what was never stitched for your spirit. Toxic people thrive on emotional entanglement. They stir confusion, create triangles, carry stories from ear to ear like sparks searching for dry grass. They hope you will catch fire alongside them. But when you refuse to carry what is not yours, when you decline to rehearse arguments that have nothing to do with your growth, you become untouchable in a way that unsettles them. There is deep strength in saying, "This does not belong to me." You do not rush to defend yourself against every rumor. You do not volunteer for battles that do not align with your values. You understand that some conversations are traps carefully designed to pull you into a web of reaction. And so you listen, you nod if necessary, and you release it. Your peace becomes more valuable than proving a point. Your energy becomes too sacred to spend on chaos. Toxic individuals often confuse detachment with defeat. They believe that if you are not fighting back, you must be weak. But the truth is far more powerful. It takes courage to disengage. It takes maturity to recognize when a situation is fueled by ego rather than truth. When you stop feeding drama with your emotion, it begins to starve. The noise may continue for a while, but without your participation, it loses its audience. And without an audience, performance fades. Choosing peace is an active decision. It is waking up each day and deciding that your spirit will not be a battlefield. It is understanding that you cannot control what others say or do, but you can control what you allow to live within you. Emotional detachment gives you space to think clearly, to respond intentionally, to remain grounded even when others are spinning in circles. It protects your clarity. It protects your joy. And perhaps most importantly, it shifts the balance of power. When someone realizes they can no longer provoke you into emotional chaos, they feel the loss of control. Their usual tactics fall flat. Their attempts to involve you in gossip or conflict are met with quiet disinterest. That disinterest speaks volumes. It says, "I have outgrown this." It says, "My life is too purposeful to be consumed by this noise." Peace is not passive. It is a boundary drawn around your soul. It is the quiet understanding that your growth requires calm soil, not constant storms. And when you consistently choose peace over participation, you do more than avoid drama. You redefine your presence. You become the steady ground in a room full of shaking ground. You become the example that chaos cannot command everyone. And that, more than any argument, is what truly unsettles those who depend on it. There is a quiet authority in a person who listens more than they speak. In a world where everyone is rushing to be heard, to interrupt, to defend, to dominate the air with their version of the truth, the one who listens becomes powerful in a different way. Toxic people often expose themselves not through interrogation, but through their own unchecked words. When you resist the urge to fill every silence, when you allow them to talk without rushing to correct or challenge, you create space for truth to rise on its own. Listening is not submission. It is strategy wrapped in grace. It allows you to observe patterns, contradictions, intentions. While they are busy explaining, justifying, exaggerating, you are gathering clarity. You begin to see what drives them, the insecurity beneath the arrogance, the control beneath the charm. And because you are not distracted by the need to win the conversation, you notice what others miss. Composure sharpens perception. Toxic individuals often rely on quick reactions. They expect you to interrupt, to argue, to defend yourself mid-sentence. That reaction gives them momentum. It turns the conversation into a competition. But when you simply listen, calm, steady, unshaken, you shift the rhythm. Your silence slows them down. Sometimes it even unsettles them. They begin to over-explain. They reveal more than they intended. In their effort to control the narrative, they uncover their own motives. There is also dignity in measured speech. When you finally choose to speak, your words carry weight because they are not wasted. You are not talking to prove intelligence or superiority. You are speaking with intention. A calm, thoughtful response after careful listening often lands deeper than a rapid-fire argument. It communicates self-control. It communicates confidence. It says, I do not need to overpower you to understand you. Listening more than speaking also protects your energy. Every argument drains something from you. Every defensive explanation pulls you further into unnecessary tension. But when you allow others to speak freely while you remain grounded, you conserve your strength. You become less reactive and more reflective. You begin to respond from wisdom rather than wounded pride. There is something deeply unsettling about a person who cannot be rushed into speech. It signals emotional maturity. It signals that your mind is not easily swayed by noise. Toxic people often depend on confusion and speed, fast accusations, fast pressure, fast manipulation. But when you slow the pace with attentive silence, you disrupt their rhythm. They cannot easily predict you. They cannot easily corner you. And in that space of careful listening, you gain something invaluable, understanding without entanglement. You see who they are without absorbing who they are. You remain composed while they unravel themselves through their own words. Your power is not in overpowering them. It is in knowing that truth reveals itself when you are patient enough to let it speak. To listen more than you speak is to stand in quiet strength. It is to trust that you do not have to shout to be significant. And when your presence becomes steady, observant, and intentional, those who once relied on your reactions begin to realize that they are no longer in control of the conversation or of you. There is a strength that does not bend with every wind, a steadiness that does not reshape itself to fit the comfort of others. It is called integrity. And integrity is not loud. It does not announce itself in every room or demand applause for its presence. It simply stands, rooted in truth, even when the ground trembles. Toxic people often test this ground. They press against your values. They tempt you with shortcuts. They whisper that compromise is easier, that silence in the face of wrong is safer. But when you remain firm, calm, unwavering, you become something they cannot easily move. Standing in truth is rarely convenient. There will be moments when it costs you approval, when it costs you invitations, when it costs you temporary comfort. Toxic individuals may attempt to guilt you, to twist narratives, to make you feel unreasonable for holding your position. They may say you are too rigid, too sensitive, too proud, but integrity is not rigidity, it is alignment. It is the quiet agreement between your conscience and your actions. And when those two are in harmony, no outside pressure can fracture you. Consistency is what makes integrity powerful. Anyone can speak truth when it benefits them. Anyone can claim values when they are being praised. But to remain honest when dishonesty would be easier, that is rare. To refuse to participate in gossip when it would earn you acceptance, that is courage. To admit your mistakes rather than shift blame, that is strength. Toxic people struggle in the presence of such steadiness because their influence depends on flexibility in others' morals. When you cannot be persuaded to betray your principles, you become unpredictable to manipulation. Integrity also means you do not change your character depending on the audience. You are not one person in private and another in public. You do not flatter to gain favor or distort truth to maintain comfort. This consistency creates a quiet authority. People learn that your word carries weight because it is not easily altered. And those who thrive on deception grow uneasy when they realize you cannot be recruited into their games. There is peace in living truthfully. You do not have to remember which version of a story you told. You do not have to calculate every interaction to protect a fragile facade. Your life becomes simpler, cleaner, freer. and that freedom radiates. Toxic individuals often operate from insecurity, constantly adjusting narratives to maintain control. When they encounter someone who does not bend under pressure, who does not shift under scrutiny, it exposes their instability. Standing firm in truth does not require aggression, it requires clarity. You do not have to argue endlessly. Sometimes integrity is as simple as saying, "That does not align with who I am," and letting the silence settle afterward. You trust that your alignment is enough. You trust that losing approval is better than losing yourself. And in that trust, you become immovable. Not hardened, not closed, but anchored. The winds may blow, the voices may rise, but your roots run deep. And those who once expected you to sway begin to realize that some spirits are not meant to be bent. There is a quiet mastery in learning the difference between reacting and responding. A reaction is immediate, emotional, and often impulsive. It rises quickly, fueled by hurt or pride, and it demands to be released. But a response is different. A response is chosen. It is shaped by reflection. It comes from awareness rather than agitation. Toxic people often try to trigger reactions because reactions give them evidence that they have access to your emotions. When you react, they feel powerful. When you respond with calm intention, you reclaim control of the moment. To respond thoughtfully is to pause long enough to understand what is truly happening. It means you do not allow someone else's tone to dictate yours. If they speak harshly, you do not have to match their volume. If they attempt to provoke you with sarcasm or criticism, you do not have to mirror it. Instead, you breathe, you consider, and you choose your words carefully. That pause may seem small, but it is transformative. In that brief space between stimulus and speech, you regain your authority. Controlled responses communicate emotional maturity. They show that your feelings do not control you. You guide them. Toxic individuals often rely on chaos to maintain influence. They may exaggerate situations, twist details, or push sensitive topics to see how you will react. When they fail to pull you into emotional turbulence, their strategy weakens. A steady response disrupts their expectation. It denies them the satisfaction of seeing you unsettled. There is also dignity in measured communication. When you respond instead of reacting, your words carry clarity. You are not speaking from anger that might distort your message. You are speaking from understanding. This makes your boundaries clearer and your intentions stronger. A calm explanation, delivered with composure, is far more impactful than a heated defense. It tells others that you value truth over tension. Controlled responses also protect your inner peace. Every reaction consumes energy. It can leave you feeling drained, regretful, or exposed. But when you choose your response, you conserve your strength. You remain centered. You avoid unnecessary conflict. You begin to notice that many provocations lose their power when they are met with neutrality rather than emotion. Silence paired with stability often says more than an argument ever could. When toxic people realize they cannot manipulate your reactions, something shifts. They may try harder at first, increasing their attempts to disturb you, but consistency in your calmness eventually teaches them that their methods are ineffective. Your restraint becomes a boundary they cannot cross. They begin to understand that access to your emotions is not automatic. It must be earned through respect. This does not mean you suppress your feelings. It means you process them privately rather than projecting them impulsively. Controlled responses are not about pretending everything is fine. They are about choosing when and how to express yourself in a way that serves your growth. You are not controlled by the moment. You control your contribution to it. And in mastering this discipline, you become steady in environments that once felt unstable. You no longer fear confrontation because you trust your ability to remain composed. Your calmness becomes your strength. Your response becomes your power. And those who depend on emotional chaos begin to realize that they cannot move someone who has learned to move with intention. There is a transformation that happens when a person decides to grow intentionally, not for applause, not for comparison, but for inner expansion. Self-improvement becomes a quiet commitment, a daily choice to become stronger, wiser, kinder, and more disciplined than you were yesterday. When you prioritize your growth, you shift your focus from the behavior of others to the development of your own character. Toxic people often rely on stagnation. They hope you remain unchanged, reactive, and emotionally available to their patterns. But growth changes your landscape. It raises your standards. It strengthens your foundation. When you commit to self-improvement, you begin to invest in your mind, your habits, and your emotional intelligence. You read more, you reflect more, you learn to regulate your thoughts instead of being ruled by them. This inner development creates distance between you and negativity. Not physical distance alone, but energetic distance. What once disturbed you may no longer reach you in the same way. Criticism loses its sharpness when you understand your worth. Manipulation loses its power when you recognize the pattern. Growth equips you with awareness, and awareness is protection. Self-improvement also changes your reactions. As you mature, you respond differently to the same situations that once triggered frustration. You notice that not every comment deserves attention. Not every opinion requires validation. This shift can confuse toxic individuals because they are accustomed to influencing your mood. When they realize their words no longer control your direction, they begin to feel their influence weakening. Your growth becomes a silent boundary. It communicates that you are no longer available for emotional games. There is dignity in focusing on your own elevation. While others may spend energy criticizing or comparing, you spend energy building. You strengthen your confidence through skill development. You refine your communication. You cultivate patience. Each improvement adds another layer of resilience, and with every layer, negativity finds fewer openings. Growth does not make you untouchable, but it makes you grounded. It gives you clarity about what you will accept and what you will release. When self-improvement becomes your priority, your environment begins to change naturally. You attract conversations that align with your development. You gravitate toward people who challenge you to think deeper, not those who attempt to diminish you. Toxic dynamics often thrive where insecurity lives, but as you grow, insecurity loses its grip. Your expanding self-respect reshapes your choices. You stop tolerating what contradicts your progress. Growth also builds emotional independence. Instead of seeking constant reassurance, you begin to trust your own judgment. Instead of depending on approval, you rely on self-awareness. This independence can unsettle those who once benefited from your uncertainty. When you no longer look to others to define your value, their attempts to undermine you feel ineffective. Your progress speaks louder than their criticism. Choosing self-improvement is choosing peace. It is deciding that your time will be invested in advancement rather than defense. It is understanding that the most powerful response to negativity is not argument, but elevation. As you rise in discipline, wisdom, and confidence, you naturally move beyond the reach of harmful energy. And in that steady climb, you discover that growth itself is your greatest shield, and your evolving self is the strongest statement you will ever make. There is a moment of power that arrives quietly, often after much reflection, when you decide that your presence will no longer be negotiated. Walking away with dignity is not about anger, and it is not about proving a point. It is about understanding that your value does not decrease because someone fails to recognize it. When you choose to leave a space that no longer respects your spirit, you are not running away. You are rising above what attempts to confine you. To walk away with dignity means you do not beg to stay where you are not honored. You do not chase affection that requires you to shrink. You do not plead for understanding in environments that thrive on misunderstanding. Instead, you gather yourself calmly, speak clearly if needed, and step forward without drama. That quiet departure often speaks louder than any argument ever could. It communicates self-respect in its purest form. Toxic individuals often expect resistance when they withdraw attention. They anticipate emotional reactions, long explanations, or visible distress. But dignity refuses to perform. It does not argue for its right to exist. It simply acknowledges when something is no longer aligned. And in that acknowledgement, it chooses movement. This movement is not fueled by revenge, it is guided by clarity. You are not leaving to punish anyone. You are leaving to protect your peace. There is strength in refusing to beg for what should be given freely. Respect cannot be forced. Love cannot be demanded. Trust cannot be extracted through pressure. When you walk away with dignity, you show that you understand this truth. You accept that anything requiring desperation is already misaligned with your worth. And that understanding transforms your posture. Your shoulders straighten, your voice steadies, your heart feels lighter. Sometimes walking away means ending conversations that go nowhere. Sometimes it means leaving relationships, environments, or habits that diminish your growth. It may not always be easy, and it may bring moments of sadness, but dignity reminds you that temporary discomfort is better than long-term self-betrayal. You choose the discomfort of change over the suffering of staying where you do not belong. When you leave calmly without insults or dramatic exits, you remove the fuel from manipulation. Toxic dynamics often rely on emotional hooks to keep people connected, but when you disengage peacefully, you break the pattern. There is no shouting match to continue. There is no chaos to feed. There is only a quiet decision to prioritize your well-being, and that decision becomes a boundary that speaks for you even after you are gone. Walking away with dignity also strengthens your identity. Each time you choose self-respect over approval, you reinforce your inner foundation. You prove to yourself that you are capable of setting limits. You demonstrate that your worth does not depend on someone else's validation. Over time, this practice builds confidence that cannot easily be shaken. And perhaps the most powerful part of walking away is this: you do not look back in regret. You move forward with understanding. You carry lessons, not bitterness. You carry wisdom, not resentment. Your departure becomes a declaration that your peace is non-negotiable, and those who once underestimated your strength begin to realize that dignity is not weakness. It is the quiet courage to choose yourself again and again. There is a confidence that does not announce itself with noise, does not decorate itself with comparison, and does not rise by lowering others. It is steady, grounded, and deeply rooted in self-awareness. Inner confidence without arrogance is not about proving that you are better than anyone else. It is about knowing that you are enough, even when no one is clapping. It is the quiet understanding that your value is not determined by applause, approval, or attention. When confidence is genuine, it feels calm. It does not rush to dominate conversations or compete for the loudest voice in the room. Instead, it stands comfortably in its own space. Toxic personalities often rely on insecurity to maintain control. They attempt to create doubt so that they can offer validation as a form of power. But when you carry inner confidence, you no longer depend on external reassurance. Their attempts to intimidate or diminish you lose effectiveness because you are not seeking permission to exist fully. Arrogance demands comparison. It measures worth by outperforming others. Inner confidence, however, understands that every individual has a different path, different timing, different strengths. It does not feel threatened by someone else's success. It does not need to compete in order to feel secure. This quiet assurance creates stability. When others try to provoke jealousy or insecurity, you remain centered. You celebrate growth, yours and others, without feeling reduced by it. There is something deeply powerful about a person who speaks with certainty but listens with humility. Inner confidence allows you to acknowledge your strengths without exaggeration and recognize your weaknesses without shame. That balance keeps you grounded. Toxic individuals may expect you to shrink under criticism or inflate under praise, but inner confidence remains steady in both situations. Compliments do not make you superior, and criticism does not make you inferior. You remain aligned with your truth. This kind of assurance changes how you move through the world. You do not over-explain your decisions to gain approval. You do not constantly seek validation to confirm your worth. You trust your preparation, your growth, and your intentions. And that trust creates peace. When someone attempts to question your abilities or challenge your identity, you do not feel compelled to react defensively. Your confidence speaks through your composure. Inner confidence also softens your presence. It allows you to be firm without being harsh. You can set boundaries without hostility. You can disagree without disrespect. Toxic environments often rely on loud dominance, but quiet confidence does not need aggression to be effective. It communicates strength through calm clarity. People may not always understand it immediately, but they feel it. Over time, this assurance reshapes your relationships. You attract healthier dynamics because you are no longer operating from fear or insecurity. You do not tolerate manipulation because you recognize your value. You do not chase validation because you provide it for yourself. This independence weakens toxic influence, as control becomes impossible without doubt to exploit. Inner confidence without arrogance is not about being perfect. It is about being comfortable in your progress. It is the steady belief that you are capable of learning, growing, and rising. And when that belief becomes your foundation, negativity struggles to shake you. You walk with quiet certainty, and that certainty becomes your strength, your protection, and your silent declaration that you are already enough.